You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholic, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a trunk, just like Jim. It's more to life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more to life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, buy some bottles, impress them girls. It's more to life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast and Food Ad. And this evening we have some main course now, and I'm talking about the Saints 33-28 loss, another loss, third loss in a row to the Detroit Lions, which happened on Sunday. That game was at noon, and it was a home game, and there's quite a bit to get into with that the game itself, and then some of the fallout afterwards. But before I get too deep into that, I want to shout someone out. A new subscriber. Anytime anyone subscribes or likes or comments, I really appreciate it. And if I identify you, I'm going to shout you out. So I just want to shout out a new subscriber here real quick before we get too deep into this. And so new subscriber's name is Joseph Bagneris. I really appreciate you subscribing. I've been sitting at 69 subscribers for seems like the longest time, and so finally you got Joseph. You helped me break through there. And hopefully it knocked down a floodgate or something. We can start getting some more new subscribers because, I really appreciate it. So anyone that listens or likes, subscribe, like, comment, I want to hear from all of you. So, yeah, I really appreciate that, Joseph Bagneris. I really appreciate you adding me to your subscribers, going ahead and liking what I'm doing here. And I really appreciate that. So thank you, Joseph. All right, so we're shouting out subscribers, new subscribers, and things like that. I got to shout out a different team that's in New Orleans, but I got to shout them out for doing things that seems like the Saints are just not capable of doing right now, and that's just solely just winning games. Winning games, but the games that they've won have been the right ones, and that's put them in the semifinals of the in-season tournament for the NBA. And I'm talking about the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans, I know I don't talk about them much, and I probably don't follow them quite as closely as I do the Saints. But like taking a quote from one of my friends this weekend, that the Pelicans not being like absolute trash and actually being a fun team to watch is actually about the only thing that's keeping me afloat with how the Saints have been playing this year. So it's awesome. The Pelicans, they won an elimination game, so they should be in the semifinals or the conference finals of the in-season tournament. And depending on who wins tonight between the Suns and the Lakers, they'll play one of those teams. And I think the Lakers are the 1 seed and the Suns are the 4 seed and the Pelicans are the 3 seed. So if the Suns lose if the Suns win, then the elimination game. I guess all the games are in Las Vegas anyways, but I don't know if they'll like decorate the stadium to make it look like it's a Pelicans home game or not. But however all that works out, in normal circumstances, if the Suns win, then the Pelicans game would be at home. But I just remembered that they're ending the finale and having the semifinal games. They're all going to be in Las Vegas anyway. So technically, I guess that's a neutral field. But yeah, shouting out the Pelicans because any New Orleans or Louisiana sports fan, Uh, they're about the only bright spot between Jaden Daniels of the LSU Tigers, uh, Pelicans. They're about the only bright spots in sports, Louisiana, LA, the real LA sports right now. And not that they're just like a dominant team or anything. They're just, now that they're healthy, they're just a fun team to watch. It's not just Zion or Brandon Ingram, but you got C.J. McCollum, Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado, just the whole team. Herbert Jones, like the team is just so deep and just so fun, and I think they kind of figured out the whole layout, for how they want to do the minutes for players like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, who showed like in the past that they're kind of injury prone. But I like this thing they're doing where they're not really having Brandon Ingram or having Zion Williamson play like every single game. Like they have enough pride. They don't have too much pride to where they'll just put Zion Williamson on the injury report for a game as being out for rest, or Brandon Ingram being out for rest, which I think that's helped them, get to and stay to where they're kind of healthy right now. And when the Pelicans are healthy, man, they're a fun team to watch. But anyways, so that's enough of my shout outs to Joseph Bagneris and the Pelicans. I just hopefully they continue finding some positives and some bright spots. So get at me, fans, with some more likes and subscribes and comments. I want it all. I want it all. It helps the channel grow as well. But anyway, so finally, what we're all here for is getting into this Saints game and how it all played out, and then some of its aftermath. But so this was so the Saints ended up losing this game 33-28. So they lost just by 4 points. And I would have never expected them to only end up losing by 4 points with how this game started. They were literally down 21-0, like 7 minutes into this game. And once they got down 21-0, I pretty much conceded and got over my emotions and just went through the whole wave and whole tidal wave that you go through when your team loses, no matter what type of team they are, sports team. So I had already like pretty much thrown my emotions away for how I was going to feel when they lost, because I was pretty much just like, okay, this is over. Like, this is like one of the worst starts to a game I've ever seen. Probably the worst start to a game that I've ever seen since I've been a Saints fan. Like, that was just awful. How you come out like that. You go 3 and out, or no, the Detroit Lions got the ball first, just marched down the field, scored a touchdown. It looked like the Saints defense just didn't want to tackle anyone. It just looked like they had no energy at all. And yeah, they just marched right down the field. And then Saints get the ball, and the first or second play of the game, they decide to like throw the ball, and Derek Carr put the ball in a good enough spot to where Juwan Johnson should have been able to catch it, but he just put up like one hand, and it bounces off the one hand that he put out there to try to catch it or tip it to himself, and then it gets intercepted and it gets returned like deep into Saints territory, and then they just with like a blink of an eye, they're giving up another touchdown, and then they get the ball back, go 3 and out, and then next thing you know, they're giving up another touchdown. That's just like the most disheartening way to start a game that I've ever seen. And the fact that the game even ended up being competitive at all after that was really surprising. I guess you got to give some credit to the players more than anyone. I'm not really going to give any credit to any of the coaches, but I'll give credit to the players, for having respect for themselves more than anything, to not just completely give up. And I think that has to do with just, the players that are on this team. It's a veteran team that at one time had a good culture. I don't know how great it is anymore, but honestly, I thought the Saints this game was headed for like a 70-20 loss, kind of like the Broncos had to the Dolphins earlier in the season. So I was thinking like the Saints and the Broncos have just completely flipped ships with how the Saints won their first two games of the season, and people had kind of hope for them going into the Green Bay game, and then the Broncos just looked like terrible. Started the season 1-5, and then next thing you know, it's like they're really respectable. Like uh, uh, right now, at least, it looks like the Broncos have kind of won that trade at the moment because the Broncos have definitely turned it around, and they're going. It looks like they're possibly going to win a win a get into the playoffs. Not by winning a horrible division like the Saints' only chance, but they could get in as a wild card now that Sean Payton's got them turned around from being a 1-5 team to a team that's in the hunt. But I was prepared. I was ready for a crazy score like that. I was ready for it to be 50-14 or 50-10 or something. But the Saints players and team didn't let that happen, and that's almost a little like disappointing, honestly, because I think in the grand scheme of things, it may have been good for them to lose like that. It maybe would have like forced the hand of Mickey Loomis or forced the hand of at least maybe Dennis Allen to fire Pete Carmichael, but for Dennis Allen to just fire everyone. But no, they fight back and end up looking respectable, which there's still a little part of me down in here that it probably would have been best for them to get blown out and look horrible. But I have a little bit of pride there too that they ended up coming back and making the game look respectable, but that it was just a kind of a wash, rinse, repeat thing that they've done all year. They get down early and then they fight back. They're like fighting back like the majority of the game, and then they just can't they can't finish it off. I've seen that so much this year. And let's see. So they were getting booed was a thing that was wild in this game as well, as how bad the Saints were getting booed, and a lot of it was happening like when Carr would come off the field, they would like cheer, and then when he'd come back in for Taysom Hill, they would boo, and that was just a crazy atmosphere, that I know a lot of the players said like they didn't notice it or it doesn't affect them, but I find that very hard to believe. And maybe Derek Carr was affected by it a little bit. I can't tell me with what with the way that he looked at times on the sidelines that he couldn't hear it at all. But I was just talking about how the Saints like fought back, like after the first quarter where it was 21-0, then it was just the game. Like if you cut off the first quarter, then the Saints end up winning this game like 28-12, and so Derek Carr, he actually after the first quarter, he actually started looking pretty good. There was a period there where he was going like 14 for 15 or 15 for 15, and then he has the Saints like what in either a 3-point game or either a 3 or 6-point game, and then he goes out with an injury. He's injured again, which is just so wild that they've been in that situation this like 3 times this year when it's been in games, like real crucial moments in games, and Derek Carr's gotten hurt. And it's always an interesting question afterwards to what would have happened in those games if Derek Carr didn't get hurt, because the first one's a little bit different because it was the Green Bay game where they were up 17-0 when he got hurt and went out. So it's a little different than the Vikings game and this game where he got hurt and they went out, and So I don't know. There's definitely a lot of questions now about Derek Carr. Like he had a nice performance before he got hurt, but he can't stop getting hurt. So now this is what, his second concussion of the year, third shoulder injury of the year, first back injury, back rib injury of the year. So do we finally see Jameis Winston to start a game and hopefully be able to finish it? Because I would start questioning Derek Carr's toughness a little bit if he actually goes out of a game for the third time and misses the remainder of a game, and then he's just perfectly fine in practice and then plays the next week like nothing even happened. And that goes kind of hand in hand with the concussions, so this is his second concussion in what, like a month or something. And Chris Olave was kind of similar to that as well. Like, at times it seems like the NFL really takes concussions seriously, but other times it's like they don't care. They just like brush it off like uh, we're in too tight of a position in the season, record wise and performance wise, that you're going to play even though you had a concussion just a week ago. So I would maybe start to question Derek Carr's toughness a little bit, though. Like, how is he so hurt that in the game he can't come back in and play and finish a tough game that they're fighting in, and then he's perfectly fine the next week? I don't know. Just an interesting development with Derek Carr, seeing how he wasn't really someone that was hurt all that much when he was with the Raiders, but now he seems like every other game he's getting knocked out of it. But yeah, so he was able to come back, and the Saints were able to score what, like 21-3. Yeah, 21 points, 21-3. Comeback, and came all the way back, and it was only like what, like a four. Yeah, it was only like a 3-point game, and just as they're getting your hopes up and thinking that they're maybe going to come back in this game, Derek Carr and James Hurst have like the weirdest fumble that I've never seen. Like a fumble where it's like, it looks like the offensive line is going to the offensive lineman's going to pull on a run play, and then as like the quarterback's getting the snap, getting the snap that the offensive lineman's like arm like knocks it out for a fumble. Like that's just a good example of like not the Saints just can't catch a break, in these comeback victories or comeback losses that they have. Like, always something's always gonna go wrong that keeps them from completing it. I was pretty much out on the game when that happened, but so they keep playing. And when we talked about Derek Carr's injury, so then Jameis Winston comes back in, and the game's only like a 6-point game at that point. Or yeah, so it was only only a 5-point game on a couple possessions that Jameis Winston had, but he was never able to like get a first down. Had a couple open shots to Chris Olave and just couldn't complete them, and couldn't keep the drives going. And I know a lot of people want to say, you can't judge Jameis Winston on what his performance was coming off cold off the bench like he did in Green Bay, even though people say, oh, well, he got groupie in field goal range. And then, of course, the game against the Minnesota Vikings, well, people say, oh, well, he got them their only 2 passing touchdowns in that game. Well, he also, it was a close game, and he also threw 2 interceptions as well. And this game seemed kind of similar with him coming in, and his performance seemed kind of similar to the Green Bay game, how when he came in, this all like an entire second half, and not until like the last drive when he did get groupie in field goal range, he just couldn't pick up a first down, and so Jameis Winston wasn't able to complete the comeback, and it's a uh, be real interesting. I'm really interested to see if Jameis Winston ends up getting uh, this week's practice reps. All the starts in practice, and is actually going to start. But I just don't think Jameis Winston's any better than Derek Carr. But I don't think Derek Carr is better than Jameis Winston really either. I think there's just some continuity there because he gets all the snaps and all the practice time and all that. But I think they're very similar. They're very similar and equal players. I think Jameis Winston's maybe a little more of a playmaker than Derek Carr, but at the same time, Derek Carr's doesn't turn the ball over quite as much either, even though that has been a serious issue for them in the last 2 games. That was kind of something that they were pretty good at, is not turning the ball over. But he threw a horrible pick six in the game against the Falcons, and then Taysom Hill, of course, had the fumble, but then he threw a pretty ugly interception in this game, and then had one of the strangest fumbles I've ever seen in this game as well. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Give all the Jameis Winston proponents a chance to see what he actually looks like after a full week of practice. But so the Saints, they just weren't able. Once Jameis Winston came in, they really just weren't able to move the ball or put any more points up on the board. But it was just a very frustrating and annoying game to watch. And I didn't fall into the hope that they were actually going to come back. Like once they went down 21, nothing, like they couldn't fool me. I've seen that story before, that they weren't going to be able to complete the comeback. So we talked kind of about the Saints fans like booing them and stuff, but there was also some other weird stuff that kind of happened during the game as well, and that was Michael Thomas. He was on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. He was on from like the start of the game, after the first Derek Carr interception, first bad play by him. Michael Thomas is on his timeline or whatever, in his X tweeting or whatever you want to call it. So hard to decide what I want to call it, X or Twitter. You just call it Twitter for so long. I think I'll just go with tweets. But Michael Thomas on there tweeting that, like, how did Derek Carr miss it, like a wide open A.T. Perry on the interception that was thrown to Juwan Johnson? It's just like, man, that's just kind of cringe kind of comments to be calling out, or throwing your own teammate like under the bus, even though I understand, like, he comes back later with another X or tweet saying like, I'm just not blind like a lot of y'all, and I see what's going on here, like, which I agree that's not a lie, but there's some like respect, like there's what do you call it, like etiquette, like Twitter or X etiquette. There's just some things that you don't say or tweet out when other things are going on, because it's just too easy to connect the dots at what you're really trying to say. And in a profession like the NFL, you just can't really say that kind of stuff about your teammates. And then, like, the other one that he had after Derek Carr got hurt, Derek Carr went out and Jameis Winston came in and said something about, like, this is Jameis Winston's moment, or Jameis Winston's the truth or something. And it's just like a perfect example of him like bashing Derek Carr, but then being a Jameis Winston backer. But all that led to a lot of fallout with fans talking about how Michael Thomas is a bad teammate, or Michael Thomas is just telling the truth. And you get that kind of fan uproar, and you even hear Saints media people during interviews with Dennis Allen asking him about it, asking him if it's something controversial, or is that something that they're going to have to handle in-house, and this, that, and the other. Next thing you know, Michael Thomas has either deleted his account or deactivated it, one or the other. But it's just it's not great for just the aesthetics of it is not great. That you say some questionable things about some people on your team, and the next thing you're deleting your account or you're deactivating your account because I mean, obviously, if you don't feel like you said anything controversial or you did nothing wrong, I don't know why you would delete your account in the first place. So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But Michael Thomas, I really don't see where he has much room to talk or tweet or X on anyone, seeing how he's been hurt just as much as anyone. If he's has anything to say about Derek Carr's toughness or getting knocked out of games, I mean, he hasn't played like in the last 3 years hardly at all. So I just don't see how he has any room to talk on anyone about not just the injuries, but just anything really. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out and if Michael Thomas actually even comes back this year and plays any, or if this is his final year in New Orleans. But uh, man, seems like these Twitter accounts, social media accounts definitely can be a lot more negative than they can be positive. And just get on to like one other negative in this game is because like we're talking about the Saints defense kind of playing bad early in games. This is what like the seventh game in a row. Let me see here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this is the seventh game in a row that the Saints have allowed 14 or more points in the first half. And that goes all the way back to the Houston Texans, the game in Houston on October 15th. And that's I talked about some crazy stats, that you see sometimes. Like that's a pretty wild one, how they play so terrible in the first half, and then they look good in the second quarter, or even just just even in the second quarter in this one. I mean, they look just awful, about as bad as you can in the first quarter, and then they buckle down, and at least in the second half, and we're having a hard time at first, kind of stopping the run, and then seeing some plays made by players like Malcolm Roach and Nathan Shepard. But yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. So talking about the defense and how it's looked horrible, but adding some injuries, what wasn't just Derek Carr that was hurt. Malcolm Roach also came out kind of later in the game with what looked like a knee injury, and now we're hearing some reports that may end up having to have surgery on that. So that definitely doesn't help a defense that's obviously already struggling every first half of every game that they're playing in, and especially not the run defense that's been awful these last couple games. It was a little bit better in this game, but just with how bad they were in the first quarter, there's just nothing that they could overcome. All right, so that's pretty much what happened in the game, and then some of the fallout from comments and injuries after the game. Let's get into some of my picks here for Saints player and hot take and, uh, and game pick here. So I was picking Blake Grupe to be the Saints player of the game in this. I was expecting him to at least make maybe a couple field goals and maybe kick the game winning field goal in this game to close it out. But this was like the worst game to pick him for, not because he missed any field goals or anything like that, or shanked the kickoff, or wasn't able to convert on an onside kick or anything like that. It was just because for the first time in weeks and months, it seems like the Saints were actually able to score in the red zone. So his only points came off of four extra points that were all like scores in the red zone. So that was pretty wild. I would love to see a lot more of that. But yeah, so can't pick can't pick Blake Grupe because of just his lack of attempts in this game, which was a great thing to see. Albeit it had to happen after they were already down by 21 points. And then so on to my hot take. I think I was pretty close to my hot take here, I think I'd be willing to give myself half a point on this because my hot take for this game was that Derek Carr was finally going to throw a touchdown to somebody, and it's crazy that it ended up being Jimmy Graham, who had been like inactive for like the last 4 weeks or so, 6 weeks he was inactive, and then the last game that he was inactive was like against Green Bay. He had a touchdown in that game, and then this first game that he's active again for the Detroit Lions, he has their first touchdown in this game, another short pass touchdown in the end zone. So it kind of has people scratching their head. Why has Jimmy Graham been inactive for this period of time? But my hot take was Derek Carr getting a pass in the red zone, passing touchdown in the red zone in the first quarter. So he wasn't able to do it in the first quarter. Saints may have won this game if he would have had one in the first quarter. But shortly after the first quarter ended, he got one in the second quarter, and then he got one in the third quarter, and he got one in the fourth quarter. So I think that's pretty good. I just didn't get the quarters right, but after the first quarter, Derek Carr he was getting them passing touchdowns. He's getting those at least one passing touchdown. The team in general was getting red zone touchdowns. So I just give myself a half a point off of that, just because Derek Carr finally was able to throw a touchdown for the first time in a while. And then on to picks. This kind of went hand in hand with Blake Grupe being my player of the game, but he wasn't able to do that. And I picked the Saints to win. There's more behind that than just me picking them to win. And I picked them to win 23-21 or 23-20. So they weren't able to do that. The Saints came close to scoring 28 points. That's about the only thing that was close there. Let's see. So the reason I had picked the Saints to win this game, the reason I thought maybe it would be kind of comical or kind of Saintsy for the Saints to win this game would be that the Saints, no one expected them to win this game, and that's why I'm not too overly upset about this game, even though on here it says I picked them to win, but in reality, did anyone really expect them to beat the Lions? But the Saintsy thing and the thing I was kind of feeling a little bit is like, yeah, okay, the Saints are going to win this game and then turn around and lose to like the 1-13, 1-14, 1-14, like just the one win Carolina Panthers at home. So that didn't happen. So that kind of messes that theory up a little bit. But let's hope that they don't turn around and still. It would probably be pretty Saintsy for them to turn around and still lose to the Panthers anyways. But they should have now that the Lions game is over and it looks like I only got about half a point on my picks all there together. But I mean, they have a chance, to win 2 games in a row. I mean, Carolina at home, New York Giants at home. I mean, they could go on a 2-game winning streak, and before you know it, they could be what 7-7 and tied for first place again. So didn't get my pick there right, but hopefully the second portion of that doesn't carry over into next week. But anyways, that's about all I have for you. This game was disappointing in the fact that they lost, but also disappointing in the fact that, man, maybe it wasn't a bad enough loss because they were able to salvage it a little bit due to the character that's on this team. They were able to salvage and look at least respectable in this game. So that may be the reason that this loss doesn't lead to anyone losing their job. But that's about, there's some multiple negatives. You look at it as a negative, you look at it as a positive. But I think most Saints fans would have been looking at it as a positive if the Saints would have just got blown out here and at least someone lose their job for it. But anyways, that's about it for this. I'm can't say that I'm like overly excited about the next game against the Panthers. Even though it's a game that they should win. Maybe when it comes up and it looks like, oh well, maybe they win this one and maybe they win the next one, maybe they'll be right back in the playoff conversation. Maybe my excitement will change, but it's just now a game for just to watch the players, not really having much hope for how the outcomes, what the outcomes of them are going to be anymore. It's just kind of wait and see, and if they just were to continue to lose and lose out, hell, they probably end up with a top 10 draft pick again, like they did last year. Just didn't own the rights to it. The Eagles did. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?